Welcome, Yamhill County, to Speaking Frankly. I'm your host, Howie Harkema, and our tagline is, "And how we doing?" Well, we're doing great today. Today I have Matt West, who is running for congressional seat for District 6, and I'm very excited to have him on today to talk about what he's up to as we go through the races. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. So to begin with, Matt, you're a scientist, and there's a lot to be said. Science is looked upon or frowned upon, depending on whether you're a certain party or not. But would you like to talk about your background and how it prepares you for all of this?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm running for CD6 because I am absolutely tired of the inaction that we're seeing and have been seeing on climate change. I have my PhD in chemical engineering, where I research renewable energy technologies, in particular, high temperature, high efficiency fuel cells. And I always wanted to spend my entire academic career fighting climate change. And that's why I was working on renewable energy. When I graduated, I got a fantastic job opportunity to go work at Intel in the Portland metro area. And I remember the first time I flew into Portland Airport, just being taken aback by how gorgeous everything was, how green was everywhere, how there was snow on the top of the mountains, especially Mount Hood in the middle of summer. I'd never seen anything like that before in my life. Unfortunately, I'm afraid I may never see that again either, because that mountain is now turning brown in the summer, as well as the skies are from the smoke being pumped into the atmosphere. We have the forests turning black from charcoal and ash as wildfires rage across our state in what we now call wildfire season. So we have spring, summer, wildfires, fall, and winter now here in Oregon, and that's truly horrifying. I got COVID near the beginning of the pandemic, and I was a long COVID sufferer. And during the actual wildfire season, I had to wear a painter's respirator, a gas mask, just to go walking my dog. Otherwise, my lungs would hurt for the rest of the day. And it feels like things are getting worse, because they are getting worse. I mean, right now, we actually just had a massive hailstorm and ice storm last week in this county, which managed to ruin about 30% of the grape harvest for a lot of our vineyards.
Yeah.
This is affecting everyone, like, deeply. And the problem is that right now there are moneyed invested interests who are, profiting off of watching the planet burn. And so that's why we haven't been able to make too much progress. Whether you're talking about climate change, whether you're talking about explosion of houselessness, explosion of drug prices, the issues surrounding healthcare for everyone in this country, we are seeing this because the wealthy and the powerful have decided that it's in their personal vested interest to not let us move forward. And I am absolutely fighting back against that. I am not taking any corporate money. I am fighting this campaign specifically to help provide real change for real people, whether that's using my scientific expertise and knowledge to help really combat climate change, looking at statistical studies in order to figure out the best way to move towards a single-payer healthcare system, or the best way to move towards housing the unhomed. These are things that I think having more people with a scientific, technological, mathematical mindset in Congress may actually be able to achieve real progress for real people in a way that we're not seeing and are used to not seeing. So really, I would like to call on people to please join this movement and fight back with me, because together we can make life better.
So Matt, a quick question for you. With all of the heat that we had last summer, where we had 115 degrees in McMinnville multiple times, do you think that in the climate realm also enhances the freezing temperatures that we've been getting in April and last February, where we had an ice storm and all of that? Could it bring about another ice age, is the question that I have.
I don't really think so. But the reason that we're seeing such wild oscillations between unprecedented ice storms and unprecedented heat domes within the same year of each other is, the way I like to describe it is like a slinky. You hold out a slinky in both hands, and if you slowly move one up and down, like you get a nice sort of wave pattern going on that's pretty predictable. But then as you're doing that, someone walks up and smacks it, and now it's all over the place until it reaches a new equilibrium. And that's what we're seeing right now. We've essentially, by pumping all this carbon dioxide, all this methane into the atmosphere, we've smacked the slinky, shifted everything off of equilibrium, and now we're entering a system where it's trying to find a new normal. And that's why we're getting these massive ice storms followed by massive heat domes. And as we move forward, we're actually projected now to have no ice in the Arctic during the summer in 10 years. And as we do that, things are going to continue to get worse because we're going to disrupt the ocean currents. We're going to disrupt the atmospheric expected temperatures because now there's no large cold masses there. We're going to essentially disrupt the reflectivity of our planet. So our oceans absorb more sunlight, more heat, and it's going to become worse faster and faster. So we will move towards a hotter, wetter planet with more energy in the climate. And until we can really start pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, it's only going to increase in its speed.
Besides the Arctic, the Antarctic ice shelf that is slowly breaking off, that's enormous. Could you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, we actually just saw this ice shelf, which the name is escaping me. I don't think it's the Ross one because that's really well known. But this is the first time in human recorded history that it's broken off ever. And as this happens, once again, we are seeing glaciers, things that have been frozen for thousands, if not millions of years, melting. And as that happens, as the ice melts in Greenland, as the ice melts in the Antarctic and the Arctic, sea levels will rise. And as they do, low-lying cities in places like Miami, New York, will begin to flood unless we put in significant amounts of money in building seawalls to keep the rising seas out. So there's so much data and so much evidence at this point that we are causing this massive increase in temperature on our planet. And the evidence is all around us. And I really feel like the people of this district, of Yamhill County, of Polk County, really feel that in a way that a lot of other places in the country don't yet. I mean, last week we actually had a hurricane, not a hurricane, a tornado warning as well in the middle of our ice and snowstorm. And I mean, if that's not evidence that stuff is really wild here, I don't know what is. We're having those wildfires, these ice storms, these heat domes affecting everyone. The droughts are drying up the aquifers and the water sources, and the agricultural sections and the farmers are really feeling that pinch as well, as are the people of these communities who have been relying on well water for, I mean, hundreds of years. And now with those aquifers drying up, with the water not being replenished by rainfall, we're going to have to find other solutions. And this is going to be a massive, massive investment in order to make sure that we can keep our communities healthy and thriving in the face of 2.5 or 3.5 degree temperature change.
Right. Talk about quickly, could you talk about corporations and the wealthy and why they're not doing anything about this?
Oh, yeah. The short answer to that is that they're making money. I mean, that's it. They're making money. They are profiting off of pulling fossil fuels, oil, energy out of the ground, burning it and pumping it into the air. They're making money off of the insecurity that people are feeling in terms of, say, gas prices, as we saw right now with Russia and Ukraine. That massive hike in gas price is not an actual function of a free market. That is a function of price gouging and opportunistic aspect of these companies. Like, it's amazing how quickly gas prices skyrocket when there's any threats to oil production, but then take forever to come back down. And that's obviously not a truly reflective or reactive market. That is them getting away with what they can get away with. That's also why we're seeing roadblocks when it comes to Medicare negotiating drug prices, because there are people who make a lot of money by not letting Medicare negotiate drug prices and keeping our medication prices the highest of anywhere in the world. It's truly bewildering, but that's what we have. We are on our way to an oligarchy.
With that being said, would you talk about single payer med situation, please?
Absolutely. I firmly believe that single payer is the right choice for our nation as we move forward. I believe that Medicare for all is necessary because I believe healthcare is a human right. There is no such thing as a free market when it comes to healthcare, because people will pay whatever it takes to ensure that they don't die, and that whether that's themselves or their loved ones. And often when you're unconscious for some medical emergency, they act on you and give you all this medical treatment that you can't object to, because in the moment you're not able to give consent, but they do it anyways, and they stick you with this bill after the fact. I'm a firm believer in single payer for a personal story of mine. When I was growing up, my best friend, his father, Chris, fell sick. And this is a family that I would go spend numerous, sleepovers with. They were essentially my second family. I spoke about them when I was best man at his wedding. His dad taught me about sauteing mushrooms and onions for a steak on top of it. I'm like, this is amazing. How have I never learned about this before? But he fell sick with a treatable illness. And this was before the Affordable Care Act. So he knew that if he went to go seek treatment, he would be labeled as a pre-existing condition, and his wife and kids didn't work. So they had their health insurance through him. Right. And he made the decision to not seek treatment, which means he made the decision to die because he thought that was in his family's best interest. And not only is that a horrible thing to deal with, like that psychological aspect on your own self, I've seen the effects that that's had on his family. Like, my friend, his sister, his mom have suffered with the aftermath of that whole thing for as long as, the last 20-ish years, 25-ish years. And it's truly, the ripple effects are pronounced. And whether or not that's the right decision he made, I honestly can't speak to it. But the point that he felt he had to, right, that's the problem. That's the scenario. So if we really want to move towards a system where we treat healthcare as a right, if we want to move towards a system where we eliminate medical debt, because medical debt is inherently amoral debt, because it's not a free market, you don't have choice. It has to be single payer. That's the only way we're going to provide quality healthcare for everyone in this country, where their lives and their dignity are treated as actually being of value.
And it should be a human right.
Absolutely. It should be. And we live in a country where we can make this happen. It is not it's not a question of can we do it? It's a question of will we have the strength to stand up against these large corporations, these large moneyed interests? And I think the answer is yes. I think we as a nation have spent so long being ground down under like these different systems, whether we're talking about private healthcare, or whether we're talking about houselessness, or just the general day-to-day of living as a working person in this country. Yeah, I think we've reached that point where this pandemic has shown it didn't create a whole lot of these problems, but it just laid them bare and exacerbated them to the point where now everyone can see how much the game is rigged.
So let's talk about how negotiations, collaboration, and conflict resolution will assist you as a congressman.
Absolutely. I mean, I have my background is in terms of is engineering. That's the job I've been doing for the last 7 years. And engineering is all about getting your colleagues together in a room, being presented with a problem, and then discussing amongst each other the best way to solve that problem. I think that's how the legislature should work, not necessarily how it works now. But I will absolutely take that energy to Washington. I will absolutely wholeheartedly work with anyone who wants to work with me, because at the end of the day, when you're in that room trying to solve a problem as an engineer, it may not be your solution, your favorite solution that the group decides on.
Right.
But you found a solution, and the goal there is to, disagree, but commit. That's what we call it in that group, is like, we may disagree on this being the best choice, but something is better than nothing. And I think that's the way that I should be looking at this, that I will never let the perfect become the enemy of the good, while I will still continue to have the ideals of single payer healthcare that, fighting for as this is what I'm here to fight for. But if there are ways that I can help give people better healthcare and better outcomes on the way to single payer, I will happily take those, but I will never stop fighting for single payer.
Let's talk about affordable housing in the marketplace, because there is so much concern in every city, in every rural district, in
Absolutely.
every urban district about affordable housing. Prices are skyrocketing in every direction. What do we do about all of this, Matt?
The first thing is we need to view housing also as a human right. Uh, we need to move towards a system that believes that all humans in our society, all people, have a right to have a roof over their heads at the end of the day. There have been studies and studies and studies that have shown that it is far cheaper in terms of tax costs to just give somebody a studio apartment where they can get themselves back on their feet with services on site than it is to pay the emergency services and pay for their hospital bills and pay for the trauma they go through as they live on the streets. Right. So we need to move towards that system. There's many, many ways we can do it. We can incentivize the building of affordable housing units in a way that they're currently not being done. We can create new zoning laws to disincentivize large swaths of single family homes and allow duplexes or even quadplexes to be built in those.
Or cottage clusters or any of that.
Exactly. I live in a quadplex now and it's fantastic. And there's single family homes in that area as well. And there's apartments nearby as well. So those mixed sort of communities of duplexes, quadplexes, cottage, clusters like you just mentioned, or single family homes really help to create a sense of community in a way that just a large swath of single family homes may not do themselves. And that's the way that we're going to increase housing density in ways that we don't create, areas of more wealth or areas of less wealth exclusively. So that's how we're going to need to make these mixed, what's what I'm looking for, communities. Mixed communities.
And they might be better communities, actually.
So they absolutely are. Once again, all the studies have shown that when you have a mixed community like this, it fosters a sense of, community and belonging in ways that, having the elite gated McMansions and then the apartments below them don't. It also makes those communities less safe because now you've got the targeted rich community where people can go and try to steal from. And they've also got the lower income communities where there's just more displeasure in general. So all of the all of the studies have shown that a mixed community of duplexes, apartments, single family homes are the happiest, safest, and overall just most friendly community.
Well, there's a difference between affordable housing, which is a $250,000 to $500,000 home, and low-cost housing, which Absolutely. Is for people who need to rent that might be on Section 8 voucher, et cetera, that allows for them to have a place with a roof over their head. Where do you stand on housing first?
Oh, I'm 100% there. As I mentioned even beforehand, the best way to help the homeless, the houseless, is to give them a home.
Yes.
You get them off the street, you provide them with stability. You are then able to help make social services nearby to help treat them for their traumas, because living on the street is extraordinary.
30 days is all it takes. And they don't,
Yeah. So housing first definitely needs to be the solution. We need to get people into a home. We need to make sure that they're healthy, that they're safe, that they're secure, because once you give that platform, that bedrock, that's the stability you need in order to get there, to find a job, to have an address, so you can actually put an address on your application in ways that right now, if you're houseless and you can't put a number on that application, then they immediately just throw your application out because there's
ground file. Yep.
Exactly. So that is the best way forward.
Yeah, I totally agree that stability of a roof over your head allows for wraparound services to come in, help you through all of the traumatic things that you've been through, and allows you to actually function in a society where it's important that you might have a job and be able to get that job through job training or further education, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
So would you talk about... let's see here. The next item is the opioids epidemic.
Yeah.
Which is serious in Oregon. Serious.
It is. This is another example of the wealthy and the powerful creating a system where they are able to profit off of the pain of other people. They knew these drugs were addictive. They knew it. And they still managed to market them to doctors and say that they're not addictive.
Right.
And that they flooded the market with them. And now you're dealing with a massive crisis. These are extraordinarily powerful and extraordinarily addictive drugs that were being treated as though they're no different than aspirin, which is horrifying. So there's multiple paths here. One, we need to hold the people accountable for the pain that they knowingly caused millions of Americans. We need to move towards helping to get people into treatment. And that means we have to look at this as a health issue first, not a crime issue. Addiction is primarily a health-related problem, and we need to treat the disease. Once again, then we come back to wraparound services. If somebody is addicted and also on the streets, then by having them in a housing first scenario where you can have wraparound services, you can provide addiction counseling there as well. But it needs to have real change, real effort put into this and helping to get people off these drugs, get people clean, hold the people who got us to this point accountable, have the government, find them, take that money and put it into services. And that is going to be the way that we can really help to create restorative justice.
Well, we're already paying for all of that. It seems a waste of our tax dollars to not bring in that final piece, which is, like you said, housing first, getting them stabilized, and then move on. Mental health and addiction go hand in hand. How do we get larger budgets in order to deal with all of this, Matt?
Yeah, my family history has addiction in it. So come from a long line of people who've struggled with alcoholism, and I know firsthand how difficult that can be.
Yep.
And part of the way we get that funding is we stop treating it as a social stigma of how could you possibly get to this point? How, this is a moral failing on your part, as we did with the war on drugs, just say no, just say no. That doesn't work when your brain has been physically rewired by your addiction into the way that your reward pathway is immediately snapped once you use that drug that helps to keep you fueled with your addiction. It's not too dissimilar from someone who's a smoker or a tobacco user.
Sure.
Brain gets rewired. So we need to treat this as a compassionate led effort to provide people with healthcare that they need. And in order to make sure that we provide adequate funding and actually get these services off the ground, that's where the federal government can come in. One of the best powers that the Congress has is power of the purse and directing of funds. This would be a perfect example of moving towards the funding to have for a single payer Medicare for all systems so that anyone who needs access can go to a doctor, not worry about what it's going to cost, get the treatment that they need, knowing that they're not going to be sent to jail because of it. That's the way that we move towards this system where people can really seek help.
So important in this day and age.
Absolutely.
So many people are affected, and the families of those people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I've got family history of it, and I've dealt with it.
I think every family has family history of it, and that's the problem. But they're not doing anything about it. Let's talk about holistic healthcare, because you're talking about things here that also relate to this.
Yes. Yeah. First of all, just to put one last bit in there, I think one thing we need to do is destigmatize talking about this in ways that we can feel empowered to share our stories that we've struggled with, because that's how you get more people to know that it's okay to seek help. So, quick plug. If you are in a situation where you need help, please seek it. There is treatment, there are pathways available, and it is not a failing on your part if you need help. We've all been there. We've all needed help at one point in our lives or another. So please take that step.
Thank you for taking that time to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we move forward, how can we incentivize holistic healthcare, whether it be a medical provider or a non-traditional holistic provider?
Yeah. I think when we're talking about healthcare in a sort of holistic sense, we need to stop working on like every individual organ is like the equivalent of its own little bit in a car, which is how we've historically looked at it as like, well, your heart is the engine, right? And then your liver is, I guess, the gas filter or whatever. It's a very bad analogy. But we've treated each individual organ as part, like an independent, isolated from the rest of the system. It has one function, that's all it does. But lately, what we've been finding is that a human's digestive tract, our gut, actually has a significant amount of neuroreceptors in there. And there's a direct feedback between the brain and the gut in real ways. So that means we need to move towards a system that is viewing the entire body as a whole, as well as individual parts that need treatment, like heart surgery, for example. The way we get there is by making sure that when we have a single payer Medicare for all system, we work towards being the entire body, vision, dental, hearing, mental health, you name it. If it's part of your body, it needs to be covered at point of service, free of charge. We also need to work towards expanding the services that we currently have, where we have, say, nurse practitioners or other licensed medical providers who are limited in what they can do. I believe we need to expand legally what they're able to provide so that we have more of a holistic system with a little bit less compartmentalized, because it's not just about there being medical services that you can go seek. It also has to be readily available where you are. And as many people in more rural counties, more rural districts and cities, there might not be that provider that you need, that specialist nearby. So it's a long trip. So we need to make sure that when we discouple medical care from profit motive, that we start building and investing in our communities, people that like resources that people can access in their own community.
So my next question is, how do we represent to all of the constituents of an entire community? Because there seems to be a lot of partisan crap going on in the world.
Yeah, especially in Yamhill, yes. Yeah. This is something that I've thought about a lot. And I think what we need to do is we need to focus on, like, I think it's like the question behind the question in a lot of ways is like somebody may be angry. And the question is, why are they angry? Like, there's often a real grievance there that hasn't been addressed. And so it's been manifesting in different ways that we may disagree with. I think it's crucially important that we try to view each other through a lens of shared humanity and try to understand where each person is coming from. You may disagree with their conclusions, but understanding at least where they're coming from and why they think the way that they do helps to humanize each other in a way that we're not there. I think we as leaders need to really tone down the rhetoric in a lot of ways to drop the temperature of the conversations.
Right.
It's got to stop being us versus them and more like, you know, like going back to the engineering example, colleagues who you don't agree with their solution, but well, they have the majority votes. So let's try to figure out how to make it best reflective for us.
Well, we used to compromise without thought, and now it's not like that.
It's not politically like valid, apparently, in this current climate. It's far easier to be more angry, more yelling to get people riled up and to like rile up a base. But that also fosters extremism. And we need to move towards a society where we really tackle that head on. And so one thing that I will do when I'm elected to Congress is I will make sure that constituent services are available in communities, locations where they need access to them, even if that's a more conservative community. So I am planning on, and obviously I'll need to continue to do some research, but instituting one office in Dallas, Oregon, and one over closer to like Newburgh, maybe closer to the Salem I-5 corridor area, so that people who live on the far west bit of Yamhill and Polk counties can easily access constituent services instead of having to drive for like 3 hours one way and then 3 hours back to get to whatever they need from their congressperson. So I will make sure that I am part of that community and that I'm reachable by the community, even if they don't like me, even if they disagree with me. I will be there to represent them as best as I can.
We have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to jump down to transparency and accountability in government. Sure. How do we bring that about? It seems to be that a lot of people want to hide a lot of stuff.
I mean, yes,
I'm trying to be PC about this.
It's totally fine, totally fine. I hear you. I mean, I think we just, as a constituency, as citizens of this country, we need to work towards holding our elected leaders accountable. I think that a lot of people who are in power are going to try to hide things just because it's in their nature to do so. They like go back to Watergate, for example. That was a horrible scandal. Well, by the consideration of then, now we've had some pretty worse ones. But a lot of that was trying to hide that information.
Sure.
It was the journalists and the people who were digging into the story that helped to keep the leaders accountable and face, accountability for their actions. So I think that's really where it starts. Putting trust and faith in not just our institutions in terms of like trust doctors, trust, experts, but journalists need to stop being attacked because they do an incredibly important job in digging up the real truth behind the stories of these things. So I think that's where we need to hold the transparency and accountability is demand it from our leaders. And if they're not providing it, hold them accountable and work towards passing laws like the Freedom of Information Act that are actually enforceable and so with some teeth, as opposed to having just everything redacted and you get a stack of redacted papers.
Right. So do you have any upcoming meet and greets?
Yeah, we are currently out and about in the community. In terms of scheduled events, we do not have a immediately scheduled like town hall. We're still building those out, but we are out and about in the community. We're meeting with folks. We are going to the various forums. And so please go to our website. Please follow us on Twitter and Facebook. You can find all of our information regarding events that we're going to on those sites as we get them scheduled.
That's awesome. How can community help you and assist you throughout the balance of your race?
The best way people in this community can support our campaign is to vote. First and foremost, vote. There's always a smaller proportion of the population that votes in primaries. If we want to actually make sure that this election is representative of the people's desires and what they want, vote. After that, follow us on Facebook. Reach out to us on our website of info@mattwestforcongress.com. Send us an email. Follow us on Twitter. DM us on Twitter. My campaign is very accessible, and I'm very, very proud of that. And if you reach out to us and you want to help, phone bank, if you want to help text bank, if you want to go knock doors or have a yard sign, reach out to us. We will get back to you, and we will help you find the best place that you can be plugged in and take the fight on for everyday people.
So I just brought up your website and your Facebook page. And if people want to get a hold of you, Matt, they can reach out in those multitudes of ways. But we also received this in the mail recently, which is really important, that you're kind of breaking out what your platform is and who you are. So thank you very much for this mailer.
Thank you. I'm really proud of the work that we've done in designing our mailers for getting people out there. We tried to make it direct, easily accessible. That's why our first thing that we sent out was a letter just saying, these are our priorities. This is what I'm fighting for. So we are in the community and we will not stop giving that message of holding the wealthy and powerful accountable, of really driving for solutions to make life better for everyone in this country. We will not stop fighting.
That's awesome. And I want to do a shout out to Robin Longston for all that he's been doing as your campaign manager. He's really got it together. So,
he does. He's phenomenal at his job. Given that this was my first time running for political office, I wanted to go out of my way to hire somebody experienced, and he is phenomenal at his job. So I tell him that all the time, but now I'm telling everyone who's.
You can tell it for me too. Thank you.
I will.
So we have come to the end of our interview conversation. Thank you so much, Matt, for being on today. And everybody that's out there, look into Matt. Go out to his website, go out to his Facebook and Twitter pages, and check up on what he's proposing that we can do in the future together, because it's so important. We have limited time to fix this climate change issue, and we need to all work together to do that. Thank you very much, Yamhill County, for watching today. We are so involved with you and care about you very much. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you so much, Howie. Pleasure.